Welcome to IT Reality. I'm your host, H-Town Vinny.
And I'm Richard Kenyan.
And I'm Nathan Bennett.
With over 4 decades of combined IT operational experience,
we may have an opinion.
Or not.
And now on with the show.
Let's go! Welcome to IT Reality. This is Richard Kenyan and Nathan Bennett, and we are missing our regular co-host, Vince, because he is in the middle of a personal move. He went from Texas to who knows where. He will fill us in when he gets back. We just wanted to put this little podcast together and let you know about VMware's new product called Aria. It was released and announced in VMworld 2022, and it is VMware's product and branding of their new multi-cloud strategy. So I'm going to let Nathan take it away because we are well outside of my wheelhouse in the developer world, but I think he writes code, so we can talk to him. So if Nathan could give us a little overview of Aria and what it is, we'll figure it out together.
Well, I think the first thing we have to basically not necessarily attack, but defend this change against is the idea that it's just a rebranding. It's not a rebranding. And the reason for that is because there are services that are being brought into Aria that have not been a part of the vRealize suite, right? And whenever anyone talks about Aria, they immediately think of the vRealize suite and the vRealize products that are out there. Now, bringing in other products, the first one is, of course, Cloud Health, which has been, in terms of cloud management and solutions that are out there from VMware, it's kind of been that one product out in the cold whenever we talk about it, because it's been the more native cloud solution. Whereas vRealize Automation can deploy into native cloud, and vRealize Operations can do operations in the native cloud. That's never been, I'll say, like the tip of the spear for those products, right? They tend to focus more specifically around VMware's wheelhouse. So, there's this nice synergy that's being brought together now between vRealize Operations, vRealize Automation, Log Insights, Cloud Health, Observability is being brought in now, which was originally Wavefront, if anyone's ever used that before. And so it's great to see that being brought together, and all these other products, and they're being brought together in a very nice way. I tend to think of it in terms of, to use an analogy, in terms of tabs versus windows. If you have multiple windows on your screen, it's probably not the most enjoyable situation that you find yourself in, but unfortunately, it's what we find ourselves in the vRealize suite land that we live in, right? And why I kind of put it in this way is because vRealize Operation has an RBAC behind it, and then Automation has an RBAC behind it. And things like this type of RBAC can be managed and configured through a centralized identity manager, which is vRealize Identity Manager. But then if you want to dictate who has access to what, then you have to go into those individual products and stipulate what they have and what they can do. Now, moving into the Aria landscape, this is much more concise and much more brought together. It makes it a lot easier for us to manage it in terms of all of the products instead of, the individual singular products. So it's kind of like, instead of really focusing on one product and then another product's left out in the cold, you have this ability to manage everything from a centralized location. And that's more than likely everyone has seen or heard of Aria Hub at this point, which is probably the central nervous system of Aria.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have heard the term Aria Graph as well. So what is the difference between the two, and how do they relate for the non-developers out there?
Yeah, so when I hear of Aria Graph, I always think about the database behind Aria Hub, which is it's a graph database that allows it to be able to understand the object and resources that are being deployed within the private cloud, public cloud, and be able to bring that into its database so that it then can be presented in Aria Hub. What this allows it to do is to be able to see multiple different areas within that singular dashboard. Um, People that have used vRealize operations understand the idea of dashboards because they created it with different management packs and things like that, and they were able to see certain levels of the network, storage, application levels, what have you, right? Hub does this for you by basically pulling in the information that's there based off of your integrations and things like that, and then being able to present it to you to whatever granular level that you would want to. And from my perspective, because I used to work with Wavefront before it became Tanzu Observability, I got to see just how far it can go, which we're not talking just the resource level. If you want to stay in that level, you absolutely can. We're not talking about like the storage level. Again, if you want to stay that level, you can. That's at the end of the day, that's the beauty of Aria, is that it has the ability to show the different levels within the resources and the architectures, but it's also grants you the ability to then go even further below that, right? This is where you're able to dig into the operation systems, the different services that are running within the virtual machines, and dig into like Kubernetes systems and stuff like that. So it has way more granularity to dive into those like very, very deep down systems and solutions. Whereas, in operations or other areas, you probably didn't have all of those different things.
So all of that information is coming from the VMware Cloud apps, and that is getting all of its metadata piped into Aria Graph, which is this new common data model that VMware has set up with the Hub and Graph combination. From the information that you and I were privy to, it seems fantastic. And there seems to be 4 different key terms that VMware is trying to work with around this, and it's cost, performance, configuration, and deliverability. All of that metadata being piped into this hub by Graph then gives you the ability to start setting an importance level per those terms: cost, performance, configuration, and delivery. If we want to dive into cost a little bit, that's where Cloud Health you had mentioned comes in. Is there anything that Cloud Health can't do now that you can see that it will be able to do with this new product line?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we've seen where cloud health can be extremely powerful. Like I think of like Tim Davis utilizing his solutions and the things that he did back when cloudjourney.io was around. He integrated cloud health with CI/CD pipeline and able to validate whether or not projects could be able to deploy within a certain RBAC configuration. And within Cloud Health, he was able for it to call out and say, "Hey, can I build it?" And if Cloud Health says you don't have the funds to build it, it would just stop it. And that's kind of like the beauty of Cloud Health. Where that is more configurable and customizable, that's great. But it would be even better if you made it so that that was just part of the whole, right? Now, when we talk about Aria, we need to kind of take a step back and remember this came from Project Ensemble, right? I just got back from AWS reInvent where I was able to talk to John Diaz a little bit about Project Ensemble, and he asked me, he was like, "Do you think we did what we needed to do?" And that was perfect because when he asked that question, in my mind I was like, I didn't get it in VMware Explorer. I did not understand it. But then at reInvent, I was able to talk to Michael Poor. I was able to talk to John Diaz and other people. And when I would talk to them and I found out what they were doing, then I was able to say, oh my gosh, I now see like this insane usability and versatility behind this. And I loved it. I just started nerding out in terms of all of these different products within the same place. And that's where things like cloud health can take um, the automation, observability, and all those different areas, and then kind of extend it into that automation space and able to really show the power behind it.
So we were going on about costs, we were going on about cloud health, but now we need to worry about the other terms of that, little stack that we were talking about. And performance is a big one. And everybody who used to use VROPs used to be able to see the performance of their VMs, their performance of their host, their performance of their storage. How does that term fold into the Aria Hub now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we always kind of saw that from a basically observability, notification, alerting type situation, right? And when we think about performance, we need to try to maintain the full stack, right? So it's not just how much CPU am I using for this. It's not just memory. Those things are important, of course, and they're always going to be there. But it's also like, where is my latency? How many requests can I take? How do I scale up? How do I scale down? Like, those are all integral decisions that you have to make around performance. But one of the things that we got to hear about today is about how difficult it is to perform this like juggling act, right? Between cost, performance, configuration, and delivery. Because if you focus too much on one, something will start falling down on the other. So maybe it's not a juggling act, but like spinning plates, right? We've all seen those people that put plates up on a dowel or a stick or whatever you want to call it. And if those plates aren't spinning, they're going to fall over. And so they just keep spinning one, and then they spin another one, and then I spin another one. It's very much the same way when we look at all these different areas within the cloud, because if you focus in one, you're going to miss out on the other. Pretty much the easiest one for us to always look at is performance, because as soon as we think, oh, let's talk about AWS very specifically. Oh, we need more performance. I'm going to increase my size, right? Outside of AWS, I think every VI admin has had that discussion where it's like, hey, can't you just add more CPUs to my virtual machine, or give me more RAM? Just throw resources at the problem, right?
And that doesn't always work well from a on-premises infrastructure that has budget and racks and people who have to go do those things. It's not click of a button. It is in some places, but the majority of the places we have is, no, I have to go do all of that. It just doesn't appear out of thin air like it does in AWS or Google or, even other cloud providers.
Well, I mean, like, even in those areas in the private cloud, maybe it's not just, it's performance, but then you won't actually, it's not really performance. But in the public cloud, maybe it is performance, but now you've got performance, but you're having a problem with cost, because now your cost has gone up. Maybe it's cost, but now that you've changed your sizing, maybe it has a problem with your AMI, and you have a problem with configuration. Maybe that sizing has to be put into your CI/CD pipeline tools within your developer tools, and like, Code Pipeline or Azure DevOps or whatever you use. And now you've got to change all of that configuration and all of that code. Again, it's that spinning plate that just starts wobbling and starts getting a little bit off. And if you don't take the time to turn back around and start, get it back to the revolutions per minute, or I don't know what to call it. It's a spinning plate, right? If you don't have it spinning the speed that it needs to go to keep staying up there, then it's going to fall.
So I know you mentioned a second ago the configuration of all of those plates, and I know part of Aria Hub is Aria Guardrails. Can you speak to that a little bit on where that configuration piece of Aria Guardrails fits into the overall hub and what actually it is and does? As I
Yeah,
give you
so
a very loaded question.
no, that's perfect. I personally really love guardrails. So guardrails comes from the IDEM project, which it came from the SaltStack acquisition. And I personally love SaltStack. I think it's a really interesting solution that uses an event bus management in order to trigger automation. And this is not something like groundbreaking. Uh, it's groundbreaking to the operational system, but in terms of cloud management, we are seeing this becoming a much more integral part of the management of the cloud. Werner Vogel's, I think it was yesterday, which was what was it? It was the first, December 1st. He talked about what the particular uh, solutions and use case could be utilized within EventBridge. And anyone that uses EventBridge, or CloudWatch events, whichever way you want to call it, understands that it's kind of like the middleman, right? If you have a notification, it hits EventBridge, and if EventBridge says, "Okay, I'm going to do X," SaltStack does the same thing, right? There's a beacon that calls to the reactor, and in this case, the reactor is like the EventBridge, quote unquote, that says, okay, I know what I need to do, and I'm going to fire off this particular salt file, which is going to send this config to this particular group of machines, right? That's how it all works. It's a notification, a database of what do I do if this happens, and then triggering off into something else to go and do it. So that's salt, that's IDEM. When we go into configurations, especially in declarative, we understand this idea of declarative infrastructure as code. It's awesome. We all love it. But then you deal with drift. Now, guardrails is actually very, very interesting because it has the ability to pull in resources within a cloud account. So, what do I mean by this? And this is all in tech preview. So right now, I'm not sure how far we really want to get into the granularity, but from a high level, it has the ability to pull in what resources are within a root account or a particular service account within an AWS AWS subscription, right? So doing something like that allows you to say, okay, now I see this drift because it's pulling in that collection of what's out there, right? So now it's got drift detection, right? Which is to say, hey, something has changed in terms of where it should be. And now you've got the next step, which is drift remediation. Based off of the configurations that I have within the IDEM configuration statements, which looks very much like a salt manifest. If for my salt stack users, it uses Jinja and uses a lot of that same parameters that we're used to. It will then say, do we want to remediate it, or do you want me to change it back, change the state into where the present state is now? And that, even though it sounds so small, is so powerful, because the reason why declarative infrastructure as code became so amazing is because we could write it in so much shorter amount of lines, right? But having to do a Terraform import, or I don't know what Plumi import would be, but bringing the resources in, it's never been a very enjoyable situation. Always something tends to happen. It doesn't really pull in the data properly. You've got that's where like HashiCorp guys and Plumi guys are just the tops of that declarative language, because they know how to do those things. Making things like that easier makes declarative infrastructure as code much more mainstream, and something that they would definitely move into a lot easier. And where guardrails expands on is, it's not just doing it at the resource level. It also, since it's based off of salt, can do it on like the bootstrap level or the operational level. And so it's doing this in, I'm not sure I can say it's full stack, but knowing salt and knowing what it can do, I can definitely say that it's going to hit the resource level in terms of AWS or cloud services that are being deployed, right? AWS resources or Azure resources like VPC or an EC2 instance, right? It can build those things, but then it can also go to the next level, and in that EC2 instance, deploy operating systems, right? If the AMI has something like an agent where it can pull to salt, it can actually try to figure out, okay, how do I want to build the application within that EC2? So it is extremely more powerful than where a lot of people are thinking in terms of like just basic infrastructure as code. And I know I talked for a long time in terms of guardrails, but it's extremely exciting in terms of where this technology can lead.
Oh, that's fantastic. I was listening to the whole thing, and while I understood half of it because I'm not the developer, it actually is quite interesting. So, speaking of audience, I know we've touched on a little bit of configuration. We touched on actually a lot of configuration, cost, performance, and then all rolled into that as delivery. Who is this VMware Aria product for? Is it for Fortune 500 companies? Is it for small developer shops with containerized environments, both on premises and up in the cloud? Who is this being marketed towards, and which of those companies' users are going to be consuming it?
That's like you added some salt and then you sprinkled some pepper on the top. I liked it. So when we talk about these things in terms of who is it for, every vendor is going to say it's for everyone, right? Myself, I like to try to take that statement and try to break it down into much more. I like to think of it like the tip of the spear, like who would actually be the ones that want to use this. And it's always the people that need to collaborate easier. So where Aria is extremely powerful is the ability to create environment specifically, based off of RBAC for whoever wants to consume it, right? So if I'm a networking guy, I can go into Aria and I can see the resources where the network is connecting to those resources. And I can also see other things in terms of like what's NSX doing? What is my network doing within these different virtual machines? And then, try to plot all that out. If I'm a developer, I'm going to log into Aria and I might not have the same view in terms of the network resources, but I can see in terms of the code base, in terms of the automation side of things, in terms of the observability of my Tanzu clusters, like how are those actually functioning? How are the pods working? Are my daemon sets all up and running in the pod sets that I created? So a developer will log into Aria and have a completely different view than what a VI admin or a networking guy will have. And so, when we talk about who is this for, I would move this into kind of the same discussion as DevOps, right? When we talk about something like, GitLab projects or Azure DevOps or something in terms of developer tools in AWS, right? These are all tool sets that are built for developers to work together in order to create a better product, right? That's what Aria is. It's not something that's just automation. It's not something that's just operationalization or configuration or performance management. Those are all parts of the whole, right? When you think of something like, I think Azure DevOps does it really well, and I'm more familiar with it. So let's just talk about that one. When you create a project in Azure DevOps, you put users within that project and then you assign them what areas within that project they have access to. So Jim has CI/CD, Carl has some of the build processes. Dana is going to touch the code base and the repositories, and Steven's also going to help Dana, and then Brittany's over here trying to work on the front end, and Dana's always been the back end developer. Like these are all like different solutions that they're going to be working on, but at the end of the day, what they all do is create a product that's better from the collaboration of all of them working together, rather than, okay, I'm going to push my code. I got a feature that I'm going to push in the code base, and then weeks upon weeks go by, and then that's the old DevOps sadness that none of us wants to move back to, right? And so that's, at the end of the day, that's what Aria is. It's that collaboration between multiple different groups to create a better product.
Fantastic. So that was coming from a pretty good developer, I would say. For me, who is an infrastructure guy looking at this product, and as I said, I had seen it at VMworld 2022. I have seen some of the briefings that we've had. I've seen some of the tech previews. Looking at this from an infrastructure point of view, it seems to me that this product is amazing because I can finally see what the VMs are doing, what the clusters are doing, what the pods are doing, what the containers are doing, and what the network is doing between those, and what VLANs are on them, and what users are on those VLANs, and which users are allowed access to which databases. It was literally everything that I have been doing my entire infrastructure career rolled up the stack into a 30,000 foot view that I could then drill back down to standing next to the container in the server, in the data center, in the account that I have, whether it's AWS or whether it's Azure, whether it's Google. It was quite fantastic looking at this demo. And I'm hoping as time goes by for this product that it's not only a developer friendly and costing accounting friendly piece of branding and marketing and product release from VMware, but it's the new way that us infrastructure folks will be able to manage their infrastructure, because you can pick up an app in its totality across its VLAN, across its users, across its security roles and ACLs, and literally move it from one cloud to another. That's AWS to Azure to Google to VMware's private cloud to your on-premises internal cloud and back again. Now, all of those pieces aren't there yet, but that's very clearly the writing on the wall of what this product will be able to do if VMware feeds all of its product lines into this with the metadata tags, with the properties, with the inventory. It can see and do everything. It's fantastic. As a non-developer, that's what I see. So that just about wraps up for what Nathan and I wanted to get across to everybody, and we're quite excited about this VMware announcement and the tech briefing that's coming out on Monday when this video will release. Again, we want to say hi to Vince, and you can reach me, Richard Kenyan, at LinkedIn and Twitter, if it's still around. And Nathan?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at VNathanBennett, and you can find me on LinkedIn. And I'm also starting Mastodon. I'm at VNathanBennett there, as well at the AWS community.social area. I don't know exactly how all of that works quite yet, but I decided to go ahead and claim my handle while I could.
Yeah, same with me. I am on the InfoSec Exchange instance of Mastodon under my Richard Kenyan name. So all of my happy profiles across the web point to me, and my name is spelled correctly. So it's Kenyan. Thank you very much, everybody. And again, Vince, we miss you. We will see you soon once you get settled. And everybody have a good day.